What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Above Average Podcast. I'm Will Marshall. After about a 6-month hiatus, we are back, and things look a little different. We got some new equipment, we got a new co-host. And so previously, I was co-hosting this podcast with Mike Sell. And back in the summertime, Mark got a promotion, moved several states away. And so the podcast had to take a pause. And big congrats to Mark. He did a lot of work to help get this off the ground. And we weren't sure if we were going to continue with it or not. And our last guest was Ethan Merritt, who's now joining me full-time as the other co-host on the Above Average Podcast. Ethan, welcome.
What is going on?
Happy to have you.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. So we had done a podcast last time with Mark. So super happy to take over Mark's starting point because I think he set you up for success with this. Because I've done a few podcasts. I listened to the first one I ever did for a guest, like for somebody hosted me on a podcast in 2017. I just played that today for the first time to be like, man, where was I starting when I heard about podcasting when I'd seen anybody else do it? So I was impressed that you guys had set something up and it was fluid.
Dude, I never thought I would do it. Like it's something that, because you know the joke now is like you see guys on like TikTok posting or like podcast clips, and then they're like, it's like in quotes, bro, we should start a podcast. Like everybody
starts a podcast.
Because I mean, it's in a sense like the level of, or the barrier of entry is so low, which is a good thing. But also I think what matters is like the commitment to it.
Yes.
Like anyone can do one episode, but can you do like 200 episodes? Not that
Yes.
we've done 200, we've done like 7, but still, like but we're here.
Exactly. Yeah.
We could have stopped dead, but we're back at it again.
And that's one thing about being a creative in general is I grew up being a creative in a couple facets, but putting yourself out there is hard. And when some people are like, oh yeah, it's easy to start a podcast. I'm like, is it easy to start a podcast? Not that I challenge people in that sense in a bad way, but I'm like, put yourself out there. Like, see how it feels to put yourself out there and do it over and over again and not see a lot of result, because you've got to do that consistently. And so I give credit to anybody that wants to try it. And I don't blame if people start, stop. I get it. It happens.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's one of those things where I don't even think I've felt the effects of it yet, because and I think obviously the goal of a podcast is that a lot of people see it, but that also comes with a lot of feedback from a lot of people, and so that's something with social media that I have not really experienced a ton, but that changes it. Like once you get to a point where you have a lot of people listening and then you've got a lot of people like just talking at you.
Yep. That's
a different story. And so then that's like a whole other level. Obviously we're not there yet, but like you get to that point, you have a whole new set of, I don't want to say problems, like good problems, but it's another type of thing to deal with.
It's another layer. It's another layer of stuff. And I think people forget that when they, want to make a judgment call on somebody wanting to start a podcast. I'm like, man, they're putting yourself out there is one first step. Getting feedback, brutal sometimes. Yeah. It's brutal. Like I've gotten rough stuff before, just generally speaking, because I put myself out there, so it's a commitment.
It is. Yeah. So, let's get into, your background though. So, I mean, I think we went over that on the podcast that you were a guest on, but in a formal sense, now that you're a co-host, I think we should, run it back a little bit.
Covering it back. Okay. Yeah. So what point are you thinking I start with? You want to give me some areas of the fitness realm, since we're kind of in that sector?
I mean, I would say
staple
athletic background, kind of like when fitness became a part of your life, I guess you could say, because for some people it's like kind of wishy-washy. It's like I do it, but I don't. But then there's some people like, you and myself, where it's just what we do. And so like when
you do.
Yeah. So when did that become just a part of your lifestyle?
Yeah. So growing up, I had done fitness and been around fitness my whole life since my earliest memory. My earliest memory that I have truly is competing in gymnastics when I was 4. Like that is one of the first memories I have, being in a competition, 4 years old, on the mushroom, which is like the precursor to the pommel horse event. And I remember that being a kid. So I grew up in a gym. My mom was a personal trainer. She had done competitive bodybuilding. So I grew up in gymnastics as part of her job. She was a manager of a gymnastics gym. So I grew up that lifestyle, being in that gym in a space where you work out kind of all year round. Like that sport is an all year round sport. It's not seasonal, right? And so I started with that, and getting into high school, we had traveled around as like a military family. And getting into high school, I got into diving because that was such an easy transition. And there's other sports I wish I would have tried, but because an all year round sport came in my life 2 times, diving is also one, then I ended up sticking to it. And because it's sort of this niche, calisthenic type sport, there's a lot of crossover to optional sports that are very good, but you can't necessarily take a guy that did baseball his whole life and get him into diving when he's 16.
Oh yeah, no, no way. Yeah.
I mean, it's possible if you're very athletic. If you're athletic in any sport, then you're just going to be athletic, right?
Right.
So that transfer over to diving was very intentional because I tried it and I was like, you know what, this is my strengths. Flipping, spinning, having the calisthenics, having strength, having awareness of your body is my biggest strength. Not throwing a football, not being the heaviest deadlifter. I mean, those are not my strengths, genetically speaking, and what I did for repetitions. I've done gymnastics repetitions, a repetition of a backflip probably, hundreds of thousands of times.
Yeah.
So it's very transferable for me to go to diving. So I dove in high school. I had won CIF in high school, which is the northern and southern halves of the state. It's not a state competition because we have a large state. It's split up. I won the southern half my last year. And then I started doing high diving, professional show high diving, my first job out of high school. And then I went into NCAA Division II diving at Clarion, which is now called, what is it called? Penn West.
Oh,
I think it's called Penn West.
It is Penn West now.
Yeah, so it's called Clarion Penn West. And one of my colleagues, actually, like a guy that I dove with, he's actually the head coach there now. So it's really cool to see him take over from being somebody that competed with me. We are in the locker room together, and now he's the head coach leading the charge on that school, which has a dominant swimming and diving program. So I went off into college to do diving and get into the national level of Division II, which we were very undefeated. We came to Pitt, we went to Buffalo, Akron. We did all the schools around here for D1. We never lost to anybody. Like, I can pridefully say that because it was a big leap to say, I'm going to go to a D2 school, but I want to go to the best one where we get the opportunity to compete almost exclusively with Division I schools.
Yeah.
And it was really setting the tone for really understanding how to work hard as an athlete versus having natural talent and good upbringing. I had to really dig deep and be better than I thought I could be, and also push myself more than I ever had.
Mm-hmm. I wasn't sure if, because I know Clarion Wrestling is Division I, so I wasn't sure if their swimming and diving was also Division I and the rest of the school's Division II.
Yeah.
But I guess it doesn't really matter, right? Because, I've never even thought about this, but conference-wise, when it comes to swimming and diving, like, because you're competing as an individual, but there is some team aspect to it. Is there?
Our points for diving go towards swimming. So the pros and cons of this, right? So as a school, you can be one sport can be Division I, the rest of the school can be Division II, and you have one outlier sport. You cannot have multiple unless the whole school goes up to Division I. Our swim team, I would say, is as competitive as the wrestlers at the time, where we had just as many people going to nationals. We didn't necessarily have as many national winners in Division II versus Division I, but what they had was the opportunity to be D1, and then the school couldn't allow anybody else to. So we probably could have split and done D1 as a diving group. The swimming, I would say yes and no, probably depends on the year. But swimming events several events can be one swimmer, so they can get a lot of scholarship money. For diving, it's that one event is points you get for a swimming event. You don't get more points. It's not a separate sport either, which is, there's pros and cons to that. But at the end of the day, you specialize as being a diver. You don't spend time swimming. You cannot do both of them at a high level. It's just completely different sports. So I got the opportunity to be a diver at Division II and have a small partial scholarship because I was only supplying the team with one event of points. I didn't do multiple events. Like if you did a relay and an individual event swimming, and you could stack events and get points.
So is that how you could end up being like a 24-time All-American because you're an All-American in multiple events?
Exactly. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So for diving is very niche. Like it should be separated in my opinion because it's such a different sport.
Yeah.
But it falls under one category. So when you take general collegiate athletics, a lot of the funding goes to male sports that people watch on TV. They watch football, basketball, baseball. Those are professional athletic sports later. So it's complicated, right? Because I only did one event, but I did it at a really high level, but I only contributed so many points in a guy's event, where other events take more priority and they get paid more and scholarship money more and stuff like that.
I never even thought about the transition from gymnastics to diving. Like that's like so obvious. Like after hearing you say it, but I never.
That's a pro move.
Yeah, never thought about that before in my life. All right, so college, get through college, swim all 4 years.
I only did 2 years of diving. So I got into college doing this lifelong athleticism, and I got into college and I thought I would do all 4 years there doing the sport that I wanted to do. And halfway through, I was getting burned out, and I started feeling that burnout after the first year, doing 2-a-day workouts all the time.
Yeah, it's unforgiving.
It is unforgiving. I mean, I spent all 4 years of college getting up at 6 a.m. I mean, there was no way around it. I just did. So growing up and doing a all year round sport where that's such a focus, and then going into college where all year round sport again. And now you're pushing the boundary to higher parts. I got to a point where I was getting burned out. I'd never been burned out in that sport, but after the first year, I knew I couldn't go back and continue all 4 years. So the goal I had was, okay, you're seeded to be a potential to win nationals. Let's get that win, and then I can walk away on a high note. So I was really heavily a goal that second year. I was like, let's really push it, and then I think I'm going to have to walk away. And I decided to find a different path. And I wanted to get into the military because I didn't really have a path out of college. Like when I went into school, like most young men, I didn't have an idea of what I was really doing in school. And most of my friends, especially at age like 18, 19, they started school and then they left and did something else. It wasn't that far-fetched. So I was feeling this angst of like, what do I do after school? I've never thought about my career life ever growing up.
Yeah.
It was just athletics. So I had to take kind of a look in the mirror and say, okay, I want to do something bigger than myself. I don't have a path that I want to go down specifically. I'm in school just to be a diver. I'm not really here to be in school. I don't really care. And so that led me to the Army.
What'd you major in?
I majored in graphic design.
Oh, okay.
Because I liked it.
Yeah.
Like I went to college and say, I just like doing it.
That makes sense for like what you do now.
Right. Yeah.
Like, yeah.
It makes sense now, but at the time when you say, oh, I'm going for graphic design, you kind of get that look from adults. They're like, oh.
Oh yeah. It's like being an art history major.
Yeah. You're like, you don't need to do that. I'm like, well, I just like it. And I don't really, I just want to enjoy college,
right. Yeah. You're not thinking about the job after.
No, I wasn't thinking about the job. No, I mean, I just never had. And it's not like I just ignored it. I was like, well, I'm athletic and there's these goals I don't want to hit. So I kept it short term where I was like, okay, I'm going to go to college and be a diver. Like that was it. So I didn't focus too much beyond that because it wasn't really helping my athletic goals in the next 4 years.
Yeah. It's such a funny thing to think about because I mean, now, like, I don't feel like I didn't have a plan, even though I didn't have a plan. You know what I'm saying? Like I kind of fell into stuff and then I just kept doing things. Like I was never like, oh yeah, this is what I'm going to do next. This is next. Like even before, recording this, we were talking about like, you asked me if I was going to do my business full time. Like that was never really like, yes.
Right.
It was always like, if it happens. And then that's where we are. So I don't think you need a plan per se, depending on what you're doing. Like if you want to be a doctor, you got to have a plan. But if you have skills and you have experience in stuff, like especially with sports, like I can't say this enough. Like it teaches you so many things about life that you can't get anywhere else. And I understand that not everyone can play sports. I get that. Because I feel like people hear me say that and they're like, oh, well, what if I'm not athletic? And I'm like, yeah, I'm not talking to you. Like it's not, but I think being at a high level with sports, you get knocked down so many times. And there's so many people out there that get knocked down once and then that's it for them. Like they have no resilience. And like that's what sports can give you is that ability to just keep coming back.
Right.
And then the discipline of getting up at 6 a.m. every day. I made a point to somebody the other day. They said, I'm not motivated to go to the gym. And I said, are you motivated to go to work every day? And they're like, well, I have to go to work. Like, do you understand how it's the same thing, right? Like, I don't enjoy, working. I don't want to go work out all the time, but I'm going to do it because I know I should. And it's the same thing. Like, you don't have to go to work. Like, yeah, you got to get paid. Yeah, whatever. You might get fired or whatever. But still, you could show up and do a shit job. Like, there's a reason that you have that like drive to be just to show up and do your best, you know. And I don't know, it's just like a shift in a mindset, I think, when it comes down to it. Like I think everyone's capable of thinking that way, but
Yes.
they just have to maybe be guided a little bit.
Yeah, and guided's the right word, because when you're growing up in sports, you are guided. I mean, there's no kid that's on a team sport that magically isn't guided. And I was doing individual sports on a team, so I'd say I had less experience on team sports collectively, how like your experience is with soccer, right? It's very different, but the same principles applied. I mean, across the board is you learn how to build resiliency, and you learn how to just kind of push past certain levels physically that mentally you can do, but physically it starts hurting, and it's that mental hurdle. And if you learn it as a kid, I mean, that transfers over a lot. You know, I think it really makes people tougher long term, even if they're not necessarily athletic long term. I think it just makes you tougher long term.
Yeah. I was just thinking about the other day when I was in, like, cause there's a few transitions that I can point to over my athletic career where I like really took the next step. And I didn't know I wanted to like do soccer like for a long time until I was 15, 16, which is pretty late in the game. And I remember going from junior high, so 8th grade, to 9th grade training with the high school team, you know, over the summer. And we used to run like hell, dude. Like, and I haven't run like this in so long, but I was so unprepared for the level of intensity. And looking back on it right now, like it's nothing. Like I've done so much worse than what we did back then. But we used to train at 3:00 because our coach was the chemistry teacher and he had to be in school like prior to school starting. So we're out there 90 degrees, running bleachers, running, you know, intervals around the track. And I was literally like borderline like depressed because I knew like when I would get up in the morning, I'd be like, shit, I gotta go run my ass off in 7 hours. And I wouldn't do anything. I'd just be like, I just gotta sit around because I know I'm gonna run. I did that for like 2 weeks, but that alone by itself, like that suck. The next year I was like, okay, I'm ready for this. I know what this is. And then it was like a huge transition. And then it happened again in college. Like I get to college as a freshman, I'm freaking out because I'm like, everyone around me is so good. They're so much bigger than me, stronger than me, move the ball way faster. And I was like, you know, you come to doubt yourself a little bit. And then after that, like after you break through it, it's like, okay, like you're here, you've been through this, you've done this, you know, and that happens. Like, I feel like if that's not happening, you're not on the right path.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly. And that's what I think. And so getting that transition from being an athlete to a career that was going to be physically and mentally tough was a perfect setup. And then again, it was another layer of like, I understand myself, but I'm putting myself in a new environment again to get tested in a new way. And that was the beginning of my Army career, which has led me very shortly up until recently.
Mm-hmm. And so how many years was that you were in the Army?
I did the Army. I was in the Army for 10 years total. I did 8 years commission. So the first 2 years I did as a cadet in college. So I was in this transition period and I decided, okay, I'm not going to be an athlete anymore. I want a way to pay for college and I want a way to find a job. So I said, okay, the Army's perfect because it's a 3.5, 4 year commitment right when you're done. I'll go be an officer. I knew a little bit about that from my dad. He wasn't Army, he was Air Force, right? So it was like a little different. Mm-hmm. But I understood the basic principles of, you know, it's going to give me another adventure. And I knew I was like, you know what? I'm not setting myself up for this long-term goals of grandeur. I'm so glad I never did that. But I put myself in a place where, okay, let's test myself physically, get a job, find a new passion, find a higher purpose than just myself doing an individual sport for so long.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So then what about, because I know there's so much you could talk about, like just within the Army itself, right? Mm-hmm. Which, I mean, we'll definitely talk more about that. But moving on from there, we're in Pittsburgh right now. I'm from Pittsburgh. How did you end up in Pittsburgh?
Yeah, I ended up in Pittsburgh because Clarion was close to there. And when I deployed in the Army, I came back and I started a business and I ended up moving down here, kind of looking for expanding my like startup business. I went to grad school and I was coming down here to like look for a job. And I was like, well, it's the closest city. I knew like 2 people here. Mm-hmm. And again, I kind of figured, I was like, well, I owe the state, the National Guard time. So I owed the state time in the Army. So no matter what, I'm living somewhere in Pennsylvania for at least a couple years until I can be relieved of this state and work somewhere else. And so I came down here and I really just, the few friends I knew, I just moved in with my buddy and we just like I just started to meet people through social media primarily. I started going to gyms where I knew, I mean, my background's athletics, so I leaned into that to meet people. I was like, I'll go to gyms and meet people, make friends, because they're going to be at least similarly like-minded people to me. And that will build a community off of itself, hopefully, because communities of that are already built here. There's gyms already established. So I'd gone out of my way to go do that, and, you know, was doing freelance work and found out how to meet people through different parts of Instagram, through social media, which was like a blessing. It's like a blessing and a curse to have it, because you spend your time on it. But like, that's how lots of companies run now. That's how I made most of my friends here. So I came down here and I met you, I met Becca, I met Tanner, I met a couple people like almost in the first couple months here, and just found people that were interested in the stuff I had been interested in, but not really exposed to that level yet.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I was going to say that's how we ended up here, you know, and I meant to ask you this. I know I've asked you this before, but I can never remember because I feel like you've been so many different places. But where are you actually from?
I'm from California.
That's what I thought.
Originally,
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I was born in like the central coast of California in a place called San Luis Obispo. Mm-hmm. Couple people lived or are from there. Like Tim Kennedy is from there. Mm-hmm. Chuck Liddell had his fight club, like his fight camp started in that town, because he went to college at the same time as my mom. He was actually friends with my mom. So they went to school together at the college called Cal Poly, and I ended up moving around a bunch because my parents moved in the military.
That's not Cal Poly Pomona, is it? Is it the same thing? Or is that a branch?
That's a different branch campus, yeah.
Okay. Cal Poly Pomona is who I played against in the Final Four, like in 2018. Yeah.
No kidding.
Yeah. They were, I mean, different place, but yeah, they were very good. So then, okay. So, well, when did you leave California, like for college?
Well, I mean, I had left and grown up traveling a lot as a kid.
Yeah.
I moved like 7-8 different times up until high school point. We came back to California. So we came back, my dad got out of the military himself, and so I went to high school there. I did leave there for college, but I had left 2 days after high school for that diving job. So I had it set in my mind. I'm like, I got this opportunity to be a diver and get paid. That'll be my summer job. And then I'll move up to college up north where I didn't know anybody. I just like straight up moved here, and I knew a couple people from being on the campus, meeting some swimmers, but I just really was ready to move and make a move, even though people ask me, they're like, your town is really nice. It's a really good area of California. And I'm like, but you don't understand, because growing up there, I'd also just been used to moving, and a lot of my friends there hadn't. I was really adamant to be like, well, let's go adventure some stuff, and I can always move back.
Right.
That was my mindset.
I mean, I think about that, like being from Pittsburgh, like I love it here. Don't get me wrong. But like people tell me like, oh yeah, I'm from California. And I'm like, what are you doing here? Like, I mean, I know Pittsburgh is cool, but I've also been to California, and California is freaking awesome, you know? So, but there is a piece of that, like the hometown thing. I mean, I have left here a couple times, but not for longer than a year, you know? And that was on the other side of Pennsylvania. Like I didn't even leave the state, you know? And so I don't know. I mean, I feel like at this point I enjoy Pittsburgh as like my home base. Like I do live here full time, but with the nature of what I do, I can kind of like come and go as I want, you know? So
now you're going to move to California.
I might
come visit you.
I might. Yeah. Maybe short term, but,
yeah, I mean, it's just kind of what you make it, right? Like there's good and bad parts of California. It's been controversial in the last couple of years as a state through COVID and all this stuff. And generally speaking, it's a state that has everything. I mean, it really does. There's oceans, mountains, things to do outside, things to do inside, big cities. It's just a different culture. It's just a different lifestyle. I mean, there's areas of it I miss so much. And then there's other times I'm like, man, Pittsburgh is better in a lot of ways too. So it's kind of what you make it. Yeah,
that's an interesting take. I mean, I was in California long enough to know that. I do know, like, obviously there's a lot of, you know, like you said, controversial in the last few years. Like, I mean, everything's so expensive. Like gas is, you know, $6 a gallon, which, I mean, again, but it's like everything is a trade-off. You know, like you're living in California, like you can get over $6 a gallon if you're looking out the window at the beach every day, you know?
Exactly.
But so been in Pittsburgh for a few years. What are you doing now?
Now that I've been here, it's been a couple years. Yeah, it's been since middle of 2018, I think is when I came here.
Yeah.
I'm now working on a startup application for health and fitness. So leaning into my background, growing up in health and fitness space in general, and getting a good influences I've had, I got the opportunity to work with another team of guys who are building out an application. And I started working with them just on the base level of like, hey, when we get this stuff built, we want some marketing help. I'm like, sure, call me when you're ready. Turns out I became really good friends with one of the other co-founders, and they were offering me a position to be on the co-founding team of four guys. Now we have 5, and work on the marketing plan, the go-to-market strategy for this app. And I'm also bringing a lot of insight from the military and from different types of workout experiences as well that are kind of bringing to the forefront of not the by the book education, but the experience hands-on work I've done to say, you know what, this is what makes an app decent. This is why I haven't used apps in the past, so those experiences are kind of coming into play as well.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exciting. That's such an interesting thing to be just to be a part of from the ground level.
Mm-hmm.
Because as with anything, when you're starting something that's completely new, right? Even from a creativity perspective, but like you get so much experience from that.
You do.
And like there's always problems. There's always, you think you solve all the problems and then you have a set of new problems.
Exactly.
And that's just how it goes. Like I found that myself in my own business, like, it's grown so much and you think like you're always chasing this point where like, yep, I'm going to get to there and I'm going to be chilling. And then you get to that point and you're like, I'm not chilling anymore. Like you never were. Like you're always like goals change, problems change, and that just continues to go. But it really goes back to what we were talking about, the resiliency of like failure and things like that. Like it's going to come up and that's just how it is. But the way I see it is like you're guaranteed success if you just continue to show up. Like I always say to my clients, you can only lose if you quit. And so
exactly,
I'm sure there's a lot of, maybe not ups and downs, but it's just a lot of problem solving, with a startup in that sense.
Yeah. And that's a good point, right? So like I have a unique background, like in general, it's very unique to probably the regular person that lives in Pittsburgh specifically. So with this team, we're starting an application that does body tracking, and it's going to do form corrective abilities within the LiDAR camera system on your phone, which has not been done at a usable level for the individual person. It's always been done on a grand scale for a sports team or for the Army, like in their secret squirrel compounds they have, where they have all these abilities and funding and money to be able to like do assessments on holistic health and fitness or different types of engagements that you do with your body. But there hasn't been an app that comes out that can do that along with programming within it, and along with kind of tying this all together to say, okay, you're lifting one lift correctly, but how are you applying it to other lifts? What are supplementary lifts based on the data that comes back that says this is actually a dangerous movement because you went up in weight and you start breaking form? It'll be predictive long term. So that's kind of where that's what you said about the problem solving. We're solving a problem that is there in the market, but it hasn't been solved by anybody else. So it's just this trade-off of how do we explain something that isn't in the market yet to investors? How do we explain it to the military so we can get some funding to move the needle? And then how do we actually make sure that this does work? Like how do we make sure the market actually does need this at a price point that's affordable for the clientele we want or expensive, and we can do a lot and we're not going to have a lot of users. So we're trying to fine tune that line with marketing and outreach and kind of brand awareness and building, while still maintaining the ability to actually accomplish something that hasn't been done for a fitness app.
Yeah, obviously like what I do, like it's not new per se. Like I joined an already existing thing, in that sense, but I think it's got to be so exciting, like to be where you're at with something brand new that also solves a problem. Cause that's what everybody, you talk about any, like super successful people, like they just found a problem that existed and then they solved it. Like that's all you really need to do. Right. And the thing is, and like to your point, is like getting people to understand that it is a problem. And then also that your solution is the solution. And, you talk about people that, I don't know, that have been rejected like 40 times. That alone is like the only story that I would need to be like, it's not going to be rejection forever, even though it's hard. It's easier said than done. Like you might hear 15 in a row and be like, shit, I don't know if I really want to do this anymore. But it's been shown so many times that if you just keep putting the reps in and keep showing up, eventually you're going to have that breakthrough. It might be, years down the road. But me personally, having experienced what you guys are doing, like to me, it makes perfect sense. Like it's a no brainer in my mind. And that's from someone on the outside looking in, like I'm not affiliated with you guys in any way. I've just seen what it can do. And I don't know. I'm excited to see like what's next and what comes from it.
Yeah. It very much comes from a place of passion for me. I've had passion in different things that I do that have stemmed in a few different areas. Creative and athleticism are the biggest ones for me. To be able to have the opportunity to make something that could help so many more people, and specifically like areas that I've had pain points in the military and in my own personal life outside of sports where I was just in a gym training. That would be a fantastic place to be able to bring somebody and say, we have something that can help you as a solution, and they can help you to not be injured and to be motivated and to not have as many friction points in your own life. I mean, that's such a big part of why I want to do this, because it helps people long term, and it's going to help not only the individual person, but help trainers and be a collective group of like a community that's built out of it, because it is going to be impactful beyond just going through the motions of your day-to-day, but it'll solve some of those problems for you. And at the end of the day, though, what is interesting from a creative and marketing standpoint, especially more kind of in branding than marketing, is telling that story so that you inspire people to better themselves. Because this app won't actually get you in more shape. And you know this perfectly well, because we had like just touch points on it, but that person still has to put in that work.
Right.
If you can provide them some relief in a few of the pillars of either excuses or injuries or the inability of knowledge, if you can cover some of those, that's great. But then if you can motivate them, then you really get to see their result shine more. And it would probably surprise people how much they can do if they are given the opportunity to fix a few of those areas. So that's where we want to thrive.
Yeah. Right there, that was the most simplified way I think I've ever heard anyone say it. Because you take someone that's completely untrained, like has no idea what they're doing in the gym from a, fitness, nutrition, whatever perspective. You really don't need that much to like really make serious changes or, get stronger. And I think a lot of people don't want to go through the trial and error themselves, which I can understand, because there's no real reason why you need to do that anymore. And that's part of the reason that I have a job. But I did the trial and error thing, and I got injured 5 times from lifting, and I, did the things that maybe don't work as well, did work as well, whatever. And so to be able to provide that for people in a simplified way that's not going to be too overwhelming just to get their foot in the door. It shrinks the barrier of entry.
Yeah. And I think, when you bring it down to the everyday person, but really bring it down to somebody that's felt what it's like to be an athlete, or felt a couple wins, but they have sticking points. They have time issues. They have a personal life. They have a family. They have a job. But if they felt that before, what we want to try to be able to do is bring that back. Because at the end of the day, after all things are said and done, you're not an athlete for your whole life. You will hit a wall where you have to take a step back. It doesn't matter who you are. Eventually, you'll have to take that step back. And when most people do that, the one thing that they can still do is almost something they start with. It's just working out, sometimes in a gym, sometimes not, but it's just starting to work out. That's what you initially did, probably before any sport. If you'd done team sports, you'd probably done some of it together, but you had always done working out together. And so if you lose that community, if you lose that athletic ability, because you do get older, and there's ways to optimize this, but if you're taking a step away, like you're taking a part of yourself that's not easy to replace, how can you replace it? Like if you can meet yourself halfway and get that feeling deep down of like accomplishment again, and the feeling of those times that you had as an athlete, if you can try to mimic that and have a community behind you, it's going to be the best way for you to have longevity that goes beyond your physical, but really into your mental health and the rest of your life.
Yeah, that's a podcast in itself right there. Because that's my marketing right there. It's like talking about what happens like when you leave sports. Because, in the United States, especially with the way that things are set up, depending on the sport that you're playing, you probably don't have much of an option to continue to play. In in a way that makes logistical sense. Like I could continue to play soccer. I could try and get on like an amateur or a semi-pro. I play for an amateur team, but we play once a week, if that. We don't train. But I'm not going to make a jump to the pro level from there, you know? And so then it's like, okay, well, is this worth doing? I mean, I enjoy it, sure, but then, you know, you're playing in a Sunday league and people are sliding in from behind, like at knee height. Like it's just not like, it's not worth the risk of injury at that point.
Right.
And so it is a weird thing because there's so many people, and I don't consider myself one of these people, but it's directly who I speak to after sports. Most people end up like myself or you, where the transition is easy because you know you're going to stay athletic, you're going to stay fit. Like it's just a no-brainer. Like you don't have to fight with yourself to get you there. And then you have the other set of people that end up, you know, 3, 4, 5, 10 years down the road, and then they realize, oh shit, like I'm not fit anymore. And the way to, you know, you're not going to go back and play anymore. You're not going to get the high school days back, but you can get at least the physical, mental benefit of being fit again very easily just from hitting the gym and just eating better and just trying to be more physically active.
Right.
You know, but it's a hard thing, man. I feel bad for people like that experience that heavily because it's got to feel almost empty. Like a piece of you is gone.
Right.
You know, and I didn't have that happen because I went straight into coaching. Like I was at the field today. I was kicking balls today. It's been 6 years since I stopped playing. You know, like it's still there for me. But there's plenty of people that do it for 20 years and like they just stop dead. Like there's a period at the end of the sentence. Like there's nothing else. It's not like, oh, I go play every now and then. It's like, I'm done.
Yep.
And that's so crazy to me.
Yep. And I've had a lot of friends from my diving days that are, you know, they work jobs, and they go about their life and stuff, and they do like they resonate with you and they want to talk about the diving days. And I understand that, like, because I miss those too. I do, like, I understand that, but I did, along with you, I continued to progress in a way that kept me physically able to and physically an additive to my job. Like going into the Army, I went in the infantry. And I started training like an infantry guy. And it wasn't like I couldn't ever do that before, but I got to find a new community and a new group and test myself physically again over and over and over again for years. Whereas most of my friends just never dove again. They never dove again. Most of them don't really go to the gym. And yeah, I mean, it's in a sense really rough to hear from them because it's exciting to talk about stuff that we used to do. But then I'm like, man, I'm still doing stuff. You could still be doing stuff, you know, like, but now it's way harder to get back on track. Like if you take a 10-year hiatus from working out, dude, I take like 3 weeks and I'm like wrecked.
Yeah.
You know,
took 2 days over Christmas. I was like, I went for a run Tuesday and I was like, this is horrible. Like I don't want to, but if you wait longer, it's going to get worse.
Gets worse.
It's so much worse.
It just gets worse.
And I feel like through college, I mean, I found lifting while I was playing soccer and just so happened to work out for me that I like didn't play. Like I was like a third string goalkeeper and like I could get away with lifting heavy in the gym because it wasn't really going to affect me. But I don't know, it was so ingrained in my mind that like this is just what I do. This is what I'm going to, this is what I'm going to do. And I never there's been times over the past, 8 years where I've maybe taken some time off, but I've never fallen out of the habit. Like that's there's a difference between being like, okay, you go on vacation, maybe you only like work out twice a week versus 6 months of like, I fell off and now I don't do it anymore. Like it just that doesn't compute in my brain. Like how do you do that? Because then you just got to claw your way back. And that's why I can understand people that, maybe you were once super fit and now you're not. Like those people know how much work it takes to get back to where they were. And that's a mountain to climb. And like, I get like being apprehensive about taking that on because it's work, but like consider like what you feel like now versus then. Like I always want to feel like that. Like I don't want the out of shapeness.
And I think you've probably found this in your business more than I have, is that when you talk to somebody and they say, well, I don't really have time to go to the gym.
Bullshit.
It is right. it's always bullshit to us, and they can just say, well, you guys are in shape. It's easier for you. And I'm like, okay, I still do things that are pushing a limit based on my like athleticism. I can do a pull-up. I can do a muscle up. So I do sets of 12 muscle ups till failure. That is very hard for me, just as hard as just maybe somebody hanging on a bar.
Yeah.
But I push myself, right? And I think the hard part is that when people fall off like that, you know, it is really hard for them to get back on. I mean, truly, really hard. And if you don't have time to go to the gym, do you want to know the repercussions of not going to the gym? They're going to be so much worse. Much worse. If you don't have time now to do that, you don't have time to get sick. You don't have time to get injured. And that can be detrimental later, where you don't have the option of going to a gym and being proactive. Instead, you are forced to go to a hospital. Yeah. Because you are having an issue. And that is the last place I personally want to be. And I never want to see anybody that I know and love or anybody have to go through that. Yeah. So if there's a way, like I said, to want to build a community that can rally behind each other, just like many others are built in the fitness space, it's been such a growing environment. And we know the benefits are beyond comprehension. And that if you don't have time for one of these factors, like if you don't have time to do a little bit of meal prepping and do yourself the favor now every day, it's going to compound in the worst way. Yep. Yeah. That's something that I'm glad I realized that early on, like, I mean, years ago, because I mean, everyone has a why, but I think everyone has a bunch of different whys. Like, I mean, yeah, do I enjoy moving? Absolutely. Do I enjoy looking sweet? Yeah. Like it's all byproducts of the same thing. But the long term for sure is the notion of like staying out of a nursing home. Like that's no shot. Like I don't want to spend the last 10 years of my, like we're all saving for freaking retirement at 65. And then you're telling me you get 7 years and then you're in a nursing home. Like that's insane. Yeah. Like I plan on deadlifting 300 at a minimum at 70 years old. There's no reason why I can't, you know, I mean, sure. Like things do catch up with you at that time. Like you will lose strength at a certain percentage after you're 60, you know, but I mean, there's plenty of people that are still doing it, you know, and it's the phrase, you know, use it or lose it. Like if you don't stay on it, yeah, sure. It's going to get harder to get there. But I mean, it might be a bold goal, but if I stay on it from now, age 28 to 68, there's no reason why I can't keep doing what I'm doing. When I was training for the marathon, and this is just a good little side story, but when I was training for the marathon like a year and a half ago, I was running the same route. It was from here. I'd go across the bridge from the Strip District to North Shore, and I'd go up that little dirt trail that goes all the way up, and I'd go all the way past the casino and come back. It'd be 6 mile loop at a minimum. And I trained all winter, and I saw, and I don't know who this is. I wish I talked to her once. I saw quite an elderly lady running the same trail as me more than one time. I'm talking, I probably saw her 10 times in that training cycle. I was holding about a 9:30 pace on most of those runs. She was holding a 9-minute pace. And she was about, I'm not kidding, about 75 years old. And wow. She ran, and it was sort of a run shuffle. She was much older than me. She was pretty bundled up. And she was outrunning me, and she was 75. Hell yeah. And it makes you feel like shit deep down, but then you think that person might have been an Olympian when they were younger. Yeah. So to them, they're like, oh man, you know, I'm not that good like they used to be, right? It's like the same thing for us. If like a person's like, oh, well, I used to be athletic like you, but now I'm 50. And I'm like, well, this lady's 75. She's doing 9-minute miles. Yeah. She would run the same route. And she ran the marathon. I do know that. And she'd ran probably several, if not hundreds. That's probably been her lifestyle for her entire upbringing, I'm guessing. Now it might have been something she found later in life. But it's impressive to see somebody at that caliber who's running equivalent speed to me, who's got 3 times my age. I mean, it showed me that you can do it no matter what. Yeah. I mean, your body's so adaptive, dude. Like, I mean, it's the sedentary lifestyle that gets to people, you know, because you spend so much time, like on average, you know, people sit all the time and like just don't do physical things. I mean, yeah, you got to walk around, you got to like lift up, you know, groceries or whatever. But if that's the hardest thing you got to do, like you're setting yourself up for a tough stretch of years, you know, and it's going to be rough. Yeah. And like you talk about that lady, like the hardest thing she's doing is running 6 miles at a 9-minute pace at 75. Like she can handle a lot of other shit that's going to put a lot of people out. Yeah. You know, and that's the name of the game. Like you don't have to, just because you're preparing yourself for the worst doesn't mean you're going to face the worst, but then you can deal with it if it comes up.
and like a lot of people aren't preparing themselves in that sense for that type of stuff. And it's such a, what would be I guess it's not delayed gratification, but what would be the opposite of delayed gratification? You know what I'm saying? Like delayed
instant gratification.
Oh, I guess that's right. No, that's not what I'm thinking of. Like, I mean, if you're like, so say for example, like someone's like, oh, I'm not going to work out because I've got 40 years to worry about being fit.
Right.
So I don't know what the term would be for somebody that's like, I'm fit, I'm okay now. I'm not worried about when I'm 60, but then you're going to end up being 60 and be like, shit, I wish I would have worried about that 40 years ago.
Yeah. I mean, just overall being complacent, like there's like a level of complacency some people have where they're like, I'll worry about that later. And I fall victim to that with work.
Yeah.
Like with work, I'm like I'll push work, but it's funny because I don't opt out of the gym,
No.
but I do opt out of other things sometimes. Sleep sometimes.
Yeah.
Right?
It's a hard one.
So there's always some areas, but I think in general, and I heard this quote in the Army, I've heard it more than once, but it's, I think it came from a book that I read for work, but I'd rather be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. I mean, like it couldn't be more true because you don't need to prepare for like the world's going to end constantly. Like I don't go to the gym because I think the world's going to end.
Right.
But I prepare for, okay, well, what if I can't pick up my kids in the future?
Mm-hmm.
That would be the world ending for me. I don't have kids yet, but I want to be able to be active with them and grandkids. Right. So, if you give yourself the level of preparation for longevity and the level of preparation so that you are able to be around as a human and not have to be sedentary, catch yourself before you have to become sedentary, because then then there might not be a comeback from that. It can get really risky older spending a lifestyle like that.
Yeah. It's I don't know. I mean, we could go deep on that as we already have gone deeper than we thought we would, but no, at this point I think that's a very good glimpse into what we're going to be talking about on the rest of the episodes of this pod. So moving forward, like the plan is to have similar like-minded guests like the two of us. And we've got some people in mind. We have to reach out to those people.
We've got to scrub the list here.
Yeah, we got to get some dates set. But that conversation right there is what you can expect to see from us, but then also the guests that we bring on as well. So, I mean, at this point, where can people find you on social media and all those different types of things?
Yeah, we'll put some shameless plugs in here.
Absolutely, yes, we should.
So my personal Instagram is Ethan Merritt Official. There's an Ethan Merritt not official.
Oh.
There is an Ethan Merritt that's a DJ somewhere that has had
Sick.
my handle for his whole life probably. So Ethan Merritt Official on Instagram, or my YouTube channel is Ethan Merritt, and then we have Pose Fitness on both of those as well. So if you want to see the app that we're working on, then it'll also be there. And that's my personal information on there that you can find me, where I post regularly, or whatever people do these days, as best as I can.
Yeah, that's where we'll be posting our Reels shorts, I guess, from this podcast. And then my Instagram is at willmarshall_1. My website is marshallfitnesstraining.com. And that's really all I got. That's all I use. So we're just going to stick with that. But yeah, I mean, I post a lot of my personal fitness stuff on there, my stuff from my business, transformations, just motivational type content, stuff like that. Which again, I'll be taking more from this and posting it onto my personal Instagram as well. And yeah, I guess that about wraps it up for us there.
I think that's a wrap.
Yeah.
It's a wrap, starting off the 2024 season, going strong.
Yeah, 3 days early.
3 days early.
All right.